What should America do about the ever worsening Ebola outbreak? According to an NBC News survey, almost 6 out of 10 Americans think the first step, at least, is to cut off all flights from most of West Africa into the United States. Now, of course, the background for this is almost 4,000 people in Liberia, Guinea, and Sierra Leone have died from Ebola since March, and twice that many cases of the disease have been reported. Just a few days ago, the CDC and U.S. Customs and Border Protection started a major plan that goes into effect Saturday for more stringent screenings of passengers from these countries at 5 American airports, and that's New York's JFK International, Newark Liberty International, Dulles International Airport outside D.C., O'Hare in Chicago, and Hartsfield-Jackson International in Atlanta. The reason being, these 5 airports see 94% of the arrivals into the United States from the countries hardest hit by Ebola. But apparently that's not enough for the American public right now, and they want more. President Obama echoed this same dire sentiment around the crisis Wednesday during a conference call with state and local officials. And I quote, "We don't have a lot of margin for error. If we don't follow protocols and procedures that are put in place, then we're putting folks in our communities at risk." Now, Jules, yesterday, Eric Duncan, America's first person to develop Ebola after arriving in the States, at least, passed away. Are Americans overreacting to that news, or is this a legitimate response to a horrible crisis?
No, Americans are definitely overreacting. Ebola is so hard. I mean, it's not the easiest thing to catch. I'm on immunosuppressives. I have because I have autoimmune disease, I have an immune system of like a cancer patient. So I have no immune system, basically. I'm not worried about fucking out Ebola. I'm worried about the common cold, because I can catch the common cold. I'm not going to come into contact with bodily fluids of someone that has Ebola on a daily basis. I mean, even out in the community, you're not, you're going to have, walk up to someone and shake their hand and it's going to be bloody and you're going to have open sores on your hand and that's how you're going to catch it? I mean, I'd like to know how people think they're going to catch it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's kind of, Ebola is kind of the inverse of that. Now, obviously, for someone with a compromised immune system, things like, influenza or even the common cold are terrifying because they spread so rapidly, but to the general public, they're not a huge threat. Ebola, on the other hand, very difficult to spread, but horrible prognosis for people who are unfortunate enough to get it. So even, with that kind of, with that information there, with that kind of in mind, do we owe it, out of respect for what this can do to people and how horrible it is to people to get it, do we owe them this kind of drastic action, or is this going to do more harm than it does good?
It's definitely going to do more harm if the one nation with the most resources to aid West Africa in this crisis shuts down its borders because it's scared. It gives off an incentive for other progressed nations to do the same, which only exacerbates the problem. One thing that, and I'm trying my hardest to not get angry because I've been getting immensely pissed off about this Ebola thing, is that we have the enterovirus that's been attacking children. Hundreds of children are infected with this. We've already had deaths, and it's spreading. And nobody seems to give two shits about this. And yet one person, comes over here and has Ebola, and it's like, holy shit, Fred, even us in Montana, we're at risk. It's like, calm down, for one. And it's like, if you're really scared about getting sick with anything, I mean, hell, you're more likely to get malaria in this country than you are to get Ebola. And it's like, what bothers me is that a lot of people did not care. Millions, or not millions, but hundreds of people have been dying in West Africa, left and right, suffering one of the scariest situations that they've ever suffered, and nobody cared because it's over there. Oh, it's a bunch of little black people that are just dying. That's what they do. Isn't that what they have when I'm watching that 30 cents a day commercial in the first place? It's like, we don't care unless it happens to us, and we get to be the drama queen. And it's like, that's bullshit, because our actions are going to affect them. One of the reasons why Ebola is spreading as drastically as it is because we refused to address the situation at the opportune time. We let it spread. We let people continue to get sick. We didn't give out the proper amount of aid, and people died because of it. But lo and behold, because Duncan came over here, and he was here for 2 weeks, and maybe he got in contact with like 7 people, now it's like, oh, Ebola, we need to do something about that. We need to find a cure for Ebola. It's like, do you not care about that African kid that died? I mean, there are people who are really suffering through that. And to be so selfish as to shut down our borders and close down flights because of the presumed idea of epidemic happening over here is totally disrespectful to life, and totally disrespectful to all those other people who are suffering, that are really going through it, who really know what an Ebola epidemic looks like.
Exactly, Haven. I mean, you are so spot on. What pisses me off is that people in America, they absolutely do not see Africa. And, I mean, it's the whole continent. They don't see Africa. It's something that is not even on the flyer, and it should be, because there are so many things going on that continent that we need to be aware of, and this Ebola thing is just one of the many, and for thousands of people who have died from this, and it's a horrible fucking death. I mean, it is a horrible fucking death. For them to have died and us to have been so nonchalant about the whole issue is just fucking bullshit. I agree 100%. It pisses me off too. And it pisses me off that we're so egocentric that we just ignore this whole populace. I mean, we ignore a whole populace of South America, too, for the most part, unless they're coming across our fucking borders. Then we start getting pissed, which is bullshit. You know, it's just, people are people. We need to start treating people like they should be treated instead of being such assholes about it. We are the bullies of the world, and we could give a shit less unless you're the right color or you're the right wealth.
Well, I'm definitely not going to try to follow that. I'm not quite as, I guess, up in arms as you guys are over it. Maybe perhaps I take a small consolation, and although we may have bungled the humanitarian response to this, at least we didn't cause this one, which is more than we can say about ISIS and some of the other horrible humanitarian disasters.
This time! It wasn't the smallpox blankets! Woo! America! Like,